Well, hello again, my friends, and welcome once more to the Invisible College. My name is Adrian Gilbert, and as you can see, I'm an author of quite a number of books, and I've also been doing this channel for, it must be at least 3 years actively. And we got a lot of videos up, but I got something very different for you today. We're going to be crossing the Atlantic, and we're going to Mexico. Actually, we go to Belize to watch a fire ceremony I attended way back in 2005. I put this video up before, the clip I'm going to show you, but I think it needs a bit more explanation, and I thought I'd do it again in a more advanced way, you could say. Anyway. Without more ado, we'll press on with that. So, a Mayan fire ceremony for peace at Cajalpech in Belize, 2005. Now, Cajalpech is a ruined Mayan city. It's actually pretty fantastic, the amount that's still there. Not much in the way of inscriptions, but an interesting little museum if you ever go that way. Bit inland in Belize. But people forget that the Mayans were not only in Mexico and Guatemala, but in other places too in Central America, particularly Belize, which is on the, let me get it right, eastern side of the Yucatan Peninsula. You probably know about the northern part of the Yucatan, the fabulous big cities there, and also tourist places that people go to. But a bit further south you've got Belize, which used to be a British colony and is now independent. So anyway, they obviously a bit more relaxed there about what you can do in a Mayan ruined city than they would be in Mexico. If you tried doing this in Mexico, I think you'd be arrested. But anyway, that said, we'll go into the whole subject of the Mayan fire ceremony for peace at Cajalpech in Belize in 2005. Now here you see me with a Mayan elder. I know he doesn't look very Mayan. I don't think he is Mayan by blood, or not totally. His name is Carlos Barrios, and he's actually an initiate of the Eagle clan of the Maya. Very knowledgeable about all Mayan things and ceremonies. I've met him a couple of times, and he's a very nice man. I don't know if he's still alive, actually. He's fairly elderly, but I hope so. Anyway, that's Carlos Barrios, and he's conducting a fire ceremony, a traditional fire ceremony of the Maya. And you don't often get a chance to witness one of these, so I jumped at it. I was on a little speaking trip with a cruise ship, a group on the cruise ship, and we visited various sites, but this was the kind of climax of the trip, and I jumped at it because, as I say, you don't often get a chance to witness a fire ceremony of this sort. Now they lay out the fire in a very particular way, and you'll see that when we go into the video footage of the actual ceremony, but it's all directed north, south, east and west, and involves putting various special substances to burn that will give off kind of fragrant smoke and odor and energy to connect with their understanding of the gods or God. Again, that's not so very different from what we do in church, is it? With all the incense and the thurible and all of that, and candles, of course, are burnt in churches as well. So we do have something a bit similar, but not in this full way. And there you see the way the fire is actually constructed with these balls of copal, which is a kind of local grow an herb. They make fragrant balls out of this. They burn them. And they also laid candles and cigars. You'll see all this when we go into the footage of the actual thing. So when we get to the end of the film, I'll show you the connections that I see between what they're doing here and certain teachings actually in the Bible, believe it or not, and connection with ancient Egypt as well. So you've got to start wondering, why would there be these connections? And I can think of two reasons. The first is, if people came from Egypt in particular and brought some of their knowledge to the Maya and taught them that. Or the other alternative is, if what we're seeing with these Mayan ceremonies is a leave-over from what was done in Atlantis. I know that's a controversial subject in itself, but there are definite connections between East and West that could be explained had there been a universal continent, called it Atlantis, in the Atlantic, perhaps now represented the last fragments with the West Indies, or maybe some other islands like Bermuda, but spreading across to Egypt and parts of Europe as well, that disappeared a long time ago. But we'll be talking about all that sort of stuff in later lectures. I've got a lot to say about Atlantis and about lost knowledge and all of that. That's something else. For now, I want us to concentrate on the fire ceremony itself, which I think is very interesting. On a hot day in June 2005, I found myself with a party of Westerners at the ancient Mayan city of Cajalpech. We had come to the remote jungles of Belize to witness a ceremony rarely seen by non-Mayans, the lighting of a sacred fire. The ceremony was led by Carlos Barrios, an initiated priest of the Eagle clan. For the ceremony, a sacred fire was laid in the traditional way. First, a diagram consisting of a circle enclosing arrows directed north, south, east and west was drawn on the ground with maize flour. 4 smaller circles were drawn within the quadrants and another around the crossing of the arrows. Balls of copal incense, 13 in all, were placed on the diagram in symmetrical fashion. Candles too were placed on the diagram, 4 thick stubby ones and 24 smaller candles were laid out again in symmetrical fashion. One by one, each of the people participating in the ceremony placed candles in the circle, 3 at a time. They also crushed up cigars and sprinkled the tobacco over the top of the candles. In the end, quite a large pile was laid in this circle. The choice of all these materials was also not accidental. Copal, tobacco, wax and maize flour are all materials the Maya believe contain an abundance of its, or magical stuff. When the fire was lit, the its would be released. This would enable a portal to be opened to the other world, which in turn would make possible communication with the gods. These ideas are very ancient. Sculptures depicting similar fire ceremonies can be seen in the British Museum and also on the facades of the temples of Palenque. A prominent actor in these ancient rituals is God El. Iconography shows him dressed as a Mayan shaman in a jaguar pelt. He smokes a cigar and is surrounded with clouds of its as he carries out rituals linked to the beginning of time. Our shaman Carlos also began his ceremony by invoking the ancient Mayan jaguar gods. He began with one called Bolanquitse, apparently the guardian of the East and of the red race.
We call you Palamkitse, you are the guardian of the fire, of the Raytras. You are the guardian of the light. You are the guardian of the light. You are the energy of the spirit.
He followed this invocation with prayers to Bolon Akal, patron of the West and of the black race, then to Mahu Kuta Bolan, patron of the South and white race, and finally to Iki Balam, the guide and guardian of the yellow race. He told us a Maya story of the birth of our present age in 3113 BC. According to this teaching, the earth was then shrouded in mists. A small remnant of people from a previous age were living in caves. They were cold and hungry, and the sky was dark. Their situation was dire. Into this world came the jaguar gods, extraterrestrial visitors from the Pleiades star system. They made a pact with the sun god that they should create a new race of people who would repopulate the earth. In exchange, the human race would offer up their prayers, and in ancient times at least, even their own blood, the richest source of its. Needless to say, such ideas were driven underground when the Spanish conquered Mexico and forced the natives to convert to Christianity. The arrival of Hernan Cortes in 1619 began a cycle of 13 hells, each of them lasting for 52 years. During this time, the natives were deprived of their birthright, and it was a time of sorrow. The last of the 13 periods of sorrow, or hells, ended on the 16th of August 1987, a date celebrated as harmonic convergence. For the Maya, this represented a liberation from slavery and the rebirth of their culture. With the completion of the initial prayers to the jaguar gods and others, Carlos lit the fire. While the fire was burning, Carlos went round the circle, person by person, giving healing. This entailed placing a medicine bag on their head and wiping down their shoulders with unlit candles. At the end of the ceremony, Carlos doused the fire with whiskey, flames leaping up from the dying fire. Back at home, I thought more about what I had witnessed, and particularly the relevance of the jaguars. I'd seen a sculpture, possibly symbolizing an alien, in a Mexican museum. If this creature were a weird jaguar, and they had visited the earth at the start of the present age, then it seemed likely they might return at its end. We do not have long to wait for the end of the age. The 13th Baktun of what the Mayans called the Age of the Jaguar comes to completion on the 21st of December 2012. On the end date, the Earth and Sun will be aligned with the southern stargate, a point where the ecliptic, the pathway of the Sun, crosses the median plane of the Milky Way. It will also be aligned with the centre of our galaxy itself. It seems extraordinary that the Maya could have devised a calendar that it's so far in advance would end with such important celestial events. It seems likely to me that this might have been given to them by their jaguar gods. If this is so, then perhaps we can expect them to come again at the end of the age, on the 21st or 22nd of December 2012. We do not have long to wait to find out if this is so, only another 6 years or less. Now you can see here the Native American medicine wheel, and this is pretty well universal to all the Native Americans. Do you call them First Nation now? We used to call them Indians when I was a boy, but I believe you're not allowed to say that anymore, so I better zip up my mouth. The Native American medicine wheel, they have divide a circle into 4 quadrants and put different colours in each. And there's different versions of this. Different tribes have subtly different ways of doing this, but it's always basically the same kind of teaching. And they understand these different colours as being associated with particular directions, and particular prayers have to be said facing the right way towards that direction, directing towards the gods, or maybe we should call them more like archangels of those different directions. And that's seen in the fire ceremony as well. But I saw a connection here with the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, which, as you know, have different colours associated with them. And in an earlier lecture I did in the Apocalypse series, I quoted a South African lady called Letta Petraeus, who contacted me a long time ago. I think she's passed on now. I expect so. She was very elderly even then. And she told me that Jesus had told her, right, that the 4 horses in their different colours represented 4 different races of mankind. So you have the white horse for the white race, you have the red horse for the red race, you had the black horse for the black race, and the pale or yellow horse for the yellow race or Asian race. So you had the 4 horses, and they're each ridden, she said, by different demonic forces, taking them over and getting them to do things. That is part of our problem, is these demonic angelic beings, these fallen angels, getting us into trouble. I won't go into everything she said, but I thought it was very interesting, this idea of the 4 horses being linked with the 4 races and the 4 directions. So you have the white race to the north, you've got the black race to the south, the red race to the west, and the yellow race to the east. And that's kind of how it is. So again, we seem to have this connection between the Mayan understanding, and that understanding could also, of course, come from the east, people crossing the Pacific and going to Mexico. There's a lot of things you see there that look very Chinese or Korean in Mexico itself, particularly a place called Teotihuacan. So the idea that Columbus, or maybe the Vikings before him, I think before the people before that even, had come from Europe and Africa. There could also have been people coming from Asia by boat. So we have got these different connections, and it seems to me that the American Indians, I'll use that name again, the American First Nations, including the Maya, preserved very ancient knowledge that predates these kind of connections with Europe and Africa. So I hope you enjoyed that. I'll be going into a lot more on the whole kind of Mayan, Mexican, Aztec, Atlantis themes in later lectures. I haven't had time to do everything yet, but we've got a lot more material to cover, and I've actually written a couple of books on the subjects, so we'll discuss those in due course as well. So thank you very much, and please click the like button if you manage to stay on this long, and do think about joining the college. I'll put the note at the end here. I'm going to develop that much further, and we are getting very close to being able to launch the new website. So thank you very much for your time.